Hello, this is Ray Capote for the Misfits Mystique. Cheers. Welcome. As you can see, I'm not drinking my regular whiskey. As you recall, throughout the filming of the Misfits, all they drank was whiskey. So when they first went to Harrah's, that was Isabel and Rosalind. Isabel had rye and water, and Rosalind had scotch on ice. When they get over to Guido's ranch, they cracked open Walker's Deluxe, which Isabel happened to bring over there. And then later on, when they went to the saloon, when Rosalind was hitting the paddleball, they were drinking Old Crow. Then, later on in the movie, they were drinking Harold's Club the second time they went to Guido's house. That's after Rosalind and Gay had spent some time together. They went back to the house, and that's when Guido flew over the house in his plane, and they were saying, "Wow, what changes you made to the house. It looks great." And then you can barely see a Harold's Club in the background. This is a mimosa, so it's 50% champagne and it's 50% orange juice. So that was one of Marilyn Monroe's favorite drinks. And the reason I have this today is we're going to dive into the book by Hap Roberts called Mimosa. And he was the personal masseuse of Marilyn Monroe. And he wrote the book, and it's also about in his time with the whole cast and crew of the Misfits. He got a small part in the movie as the ambulance driver. And to be more appropriate for the Hap Roberts book, I'm going to go ahead and change into Rosalind's former husband, Raymond Tabor, as played by Kevin McCarthy. So this is very similar to what Kevin McCarthy would have worn on the courthouse steps as he was waiting for Marilyn to go up and meet him. So Marilyn Monroe was playing Rosalind Tabor in the Misfits, and Kevin McCarthy was playing Raymond Tabor, her husband. And this was very similar to the suit. The width of the tie is similar. This was actually my father's best friend. He gave me this, and this is from the 50s. The lapels were narrower. This was 1960 when they filmed the Misfits. The hats were smaller. The pants fit tighter, and they got even thinner than this. I'm very much into fashion from different eras, and I have a wardrobe that covers everything from like the 1890s to present day. This was kind of transitionary because they got even thinner. The ties were like pencil thin. The lapels got even thinner. The hat smaller. The pants even tighter as the 60s rolled along. And obviously in the late 60s they got to the bell bottoms in the hippie era. But my favorite era is mid 50s to early 60s. So this is very similar to what Kevin McCarthy. He had an interesting tie in Arthur Miller's book. He even mentioned that Raymond had this flamboyant tie, and it looked like a gypsy dancing with an upside down umbrella and some geometric figures, but this is very similar to that. So I'm wearing this in honor of covering Hap Roberts' book, Mimosa, Memories of Marilyn and the Making of the Misfits. And I absolutely love this book. His nephew, Hap Roberts, right here, and it was compiled by Hap Roberts' friend, or a person that he contracted by the name of Chris Jacobs, who was an IT specialist. And Ralph is right here, and this was on the set of the Misfits, more than likely taken in Reno. Marilyn is wearing her cherry dress that you saw her when she did the paddleball scene. And here, by the way, is Snyder, Mr. Snyder. I forgot his first name. He was the makeup artist for Marilyn and many other famous actors. Here's Ralph on the back and on the front sleeve as well. And on the back sleeve, I believe this is Hap Roberts. And down here is Chris Jacobs, who did a lot of the yeoman's work. There were like 14 manuscripts and boxes. He had to compile it. Took him a long time. And there's another picture here, and this is Hap Roberts here. So Hap Roberts was Ralph's nephew. So Ralph was born in Salisbury, North Carolina on August 16th, 1916. So he was almost exactly a decade older than Marilyn Monroe. She was born June 1st, 1926. We'll be celebrating her 100th birthday this year, and I'll be covering that for the next 90 days as well, countdown to 100. And Ralph, it all started when he was around 24 years old. This would have put him in 1941, and he joined the military to get his year service out of the way. Turns out, of course, as we all know, Pearl Harbor hits December 7th, 1941, and he ends up being in the service until 1946. So his passion was acting, and I'm guessing it was the GI Bill. He goes to New York in 1946, and he studies under Herbert Berghoff's acting class, and this will be in New York City. And you know, Roberts, as described by Chris Jacobs, was a big burly guy, but he seemed like, you know, that lovable, you know, big guy, gentle giant. That's the way I read him. But he ends up getting out, and you know, being that size, you're not going to get a lot of leading acting roles. And even the supporting actor stuff is going to be pretty limited because you're this huge guy. But, you know, he loved what he was doing. And he ended up doing 11 films and 5 Broadway plays and a handful of TV appearances, including the Show of Shows. So the first Broadway debut was Angel Street. That would have been in 1948. And then in 1951, he had his film debut, MGM's Phone 1119. But again, he just couldn't get a lot of roles. He ended up studying, though, in 1949 at the Swedish Institute of Massage and Physiotherapy, and I'm guessing this was in New York. And that's what kind of opened the doors for him. If you fast forward a little bit, he ends up going to the actor's studio, Lee Strasberg's actor's studio in New York, continues to take lessons. And he told Lee, look, if I'll give you free massages if you give me free acting lessons. So they made that deal. He ended up giving massages for Paula, Lee's wife, and also Susan, his daughter. He became very good friends with Susan. If you recall, Susan Strasberg was in Picnic, and that's one of my favorite movies also, with Bill Holden. Fast forward to spring of 1957. And it was the habit of all these, you know, students with Lee that they would hang around his apartment, the Dakota Apartments on Central Park West. And on Sunday mornings, they would go there, bring their own cereal bowls, have some coffee, some tea, donuts, whatever. And on this spring morning, this spring Sunday morning in 1957, Roberts is talking with Susan in the kitchen. Lee goes to the door. In there, he's talking with the lady there. Enters this blonde lady, and Lee is leaning up against a sink, and Susan and Ralph Roberts are standing there, and this lady who walks in is standing there. They're all together. And Lee's telling these wonderful tales about Broadway. And they're just laughing it up, having a great time, just amazed at these stories that Lee... I wish I was a fly on the wall, obviously, regarding these stories. And they're looking at each other, and they're just looking at each other in amazement. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? So Ralph, he needed to get going. I don't know if he had a massage that he had to give to someone else. Probably. And as he's going out the door, he asked Susan, you know, Susan, who was that beautiful lady that was in there? And Susan is looking at him baffled, and he's going, oh, I thought you guys knew each other. That's Marilyn. And it turned out he understood that it was Marilyn Monroe. And so that was pretty amazing, because she had done, you know, The 7-Year Itch and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Niagara, all these really famous movies. But she looked different in person and acted differently. As Robert stated in the book, he actually crossed paths with her twice. And it doesn't state exactly what year, but he was walking with, keep in mind, I gave you a list of the persons that he gave massages to. Judy Holliday was one of them. And he ended up giving her massages too. They were walking east on 54th Street. When they got to the intersection of Park Avenue, Marilyn was on the island there. She spots Judy Holliday. And she goes, Judy, I'm a big fan of yours, and I love the impression you gave of me on the Perry Como show. And Judy looked over and said, oh yeah, I'm a big fan of yours too, Marilyn. Marilyn was with an escort. She kept walking. She walked off. Probably didn't even notice that Roberts was there. About a week later, they crossed paths in New York as well. That is totally different than this. When they're in the kitchen, they actually see eye to eye. Okay, Susan Strasberg, Ralph Roberts, and Marilyn Monroe are watching Lee. Just, you know, you can imagine it's like this, probably this tiny kitchen, within feet of each other. So much so that Susan thought they knew each other. So you fast forward now. Marilyn, he ends up being her masseuse, put it that way. He gave Marilyn her first massage in November of 1959. And I'll cover that in the next episode. Mind-blowing. Just, this book is so amazing. Right off the bat, I was taken by it. I couldn't put it down. Thank you for watching. My name is Ray Capote for the Misfits Mystique. Cheers with this mimosa. Have a good night.